Welcome back, Stupid versus the Spread, Week 6 college football show. Good week of football. We'll just delve right into it. It was a crazy week if you were ranked 15 to 24. By crazy, it's probably bad. For those who didn't notice, of the teams ranked 15 to 24, so that's 10 teams. Only 2 of them won. One of whom played another, but the rest of them lost. So 8 losses. A lot of teams dropped out of the what you'd consider probably the mid range of the top 25 teams that are like, maybe if they go on a huge run, they can be in contention for the playoffs. I'm curious as to who out of those teams you think Mike might come back into that top, I don't know, 20 range, and who might, I don't know, kind of slide into obscurity for the remainder of the season.
So I think FSU is a definite contender. They lost a somewhat closest game, albeit at home, against a very experienced Wake team. So I think part of that is probably the growing pains of just having a younger-ish team and Mike Norvell finally getting going in the right direction. So I would expect that by the end of the season, you could see them back in that top 25 conversation. Um, We'll see what happens with Oklahoma. It depends on how long Dylan Gabriel's out. That looked like a nasty hit that he took in that
Yeah.
TCU game. But regardless, if you play defense like that every week, you are not. You're never going to make your way back into contention. I think for me, I would say it's probably Baylor, the most experienced team, great offensive line, playing a weaker-ish conference, and I don't think a loss to a much better than we probably gave them credit for Oklahoma State team with. What it comes down to for them is, and we'll talk to them a little bit later. Spencer Sanders is playing really well, and that's not really. Baylor's now 3-2, 2 losses being a double overtime thriller on the road at BYU, and a loss at home, but a loss to a very good Oklahoma State team. So I think out of the teams that you look at in that 15 to 24 range, that you could say who's going to come back into contention, I think Baylor's probably your most likely pick.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree, only because Washington didn't drop out of the top 25. And granted, I think they're 21 now, so they don't technically count in that conversation. So I think you're right. I think Baylor has a few things to figure out, and I don't think obviously they performed very well this week, but I think they can probably come back and show that they have some ability to show out and probably win some more games. I see them as obviously a bowl contending team, but probably a pretty good, I guess low 25 team. I think the team that kind of surprised me and that I, also didn't expect to lose, I think Pitt. I was very shocked to see their performance this week. Obviously, you come in, you're thinking this year's going to be great, and then you've dropped 2 so far, and it's only early October. Granted, one of those was the Tennessee, but I don't think that losing to a Georgia Tech team that just fired their coach, I mean, that's a real tough look. It wouldn't surprise me if they're back in the top 25, but I also, I was very disappointed. I really was rooting for Pitt this year, and looking at their schedule, it's not the hardest thing in the world. I think the 2 big games, three difficult games they have left are UNC, Syracuse, and take your pick between Louisville and Miami, Florida. But I was a little disappointed with how they performed. But yeah, crazy mix up. So no real change to our top 5 or top 4, which is really what matters this year for the college football playoff.
One thing I was going to say on Washington, that game was awesome. Friday night, that was a lot of fun. DTR is incredible. That one juke he made, the back juke he made where the 2 Washington defenders tackled each other was outstanding. It was so cocky and smooth.
It was pretty cool.
But Michael Penix, Can't Andre Ware on the broadcast, and I'll call him out by name. He can come visit me if he wants to talk about it. Um, Andre Ware went into that game saying that he would vote Michael Penix for the Heisman if the season had ended Thursday. And Michael Penix went out and threw two god awful interceptions
Yeah, very bad.
during that game. One of which was like a pretty basic corner route on his dominant side. So left-handed quarterback looking left reads the coverage, and it was a cover two. It might have been a cover like 8 where there was a flat defender, then there was an overlapping defender, and then there was a safety over the top, and he threw the corner route into basically double coverage with another man underneath. Like it didn't make and I watched the replay like 3 times because I was like, am I seeing exactly what he's seeing? And the answer was yes. There's nothing there, and he threw the ball anyway. Hype train off on Washington. Completely off the rails. I think they end up exactly where we thought they'd be, probably a little bit better than we thought they'd be. But I think all of that evidence is that Michigan State's very bad. But anyway, I had to get that out because I was like, I watched this game and I was like, Michael Penix was God not good, and Andre Ware was like, no, he's the best quarterback in the country. I was like, no, he's not.
Yeah, I mean that was rough for the Huskies. You expect them to go in there and take care of business as the ranked 15 team, and they just don't do it. I still think Michael Penix can bounce back. I believe college coaches kind of give their players, especially the young quarterbacks, a chance to kind of you're allowed to have a bad game.
Yeah, and
Um,
he throws a nice deep ball. It was just that was a very basic high low read, and he threw it directly into triple cover.
yeah,
Directly
I
into.
think that's about the point where I was like, I don't think Washington's winning this game.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's so top 10 really only the big changes to the top 10. Alabama moves to 1. Georgia drops down to 2 after Georgia's questionable performance this past week, where they just looked a shell of themselves. Um, and then Oklahoma State jumps up 2 spots. I was a little surprised to see that. I thought Tennessee might move up and Oklahoma State might move up 1. But then Ole Miss, Penn State ran out the top 10. So no real other changes. USC still 6, Clemson 5, Michigan 4, Ohio State 3. Um, but a couple of those teams had statement wins, I would say. Clemson, Bama, Michigan, and uh, of those, I think Oklahoma State as well. All in the top 10. Who impressed you the most, Mike?
Um, I think it's between. Wow, this is really tough, and I think Clemson because they played a top 10 team, and
Okay.
I get that it was at home, but for somebody who has been a known DJ hater, and I have been, he played a very good game, and I have to just stop saying that he's not a good quarterback this year because he has been. He's been a great quarterback for them this year. The offense looks functional. They, they get the ball. They found guys who can make enough plays on the outside to make them competitive in every game. Will Shipley has been fantastic for them this year. Their
Mm-hmm.
offensive line looks like it's stabilized, and DJ's showing the poise to pull the ball down and run and use his huge frame to get positive yardage when he needs to. So they it was a very professional performance by Clemson in a spot we really didn't think that they were going to show up and do that. I think Bama's performance was probably impressive in the context of I thought Arkansas was probably a lot better than that game showed, and to have Bryce Young go out and then Bama still score 35 points without him says a lot about Arkansas's defense. Is kind of I think that one's more disappointing for Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I would say number 2 on that list is probably Oklahoma State, just because we both I think Baylor is a very good football team, and Oklahoma State went out and again another professional performance. They went out and won a game where they looked like the better team. They looked like the more composed team. They looked like the team that was ready to make more plays in that game. So I would say Clemson definitely with an impressive win, not just I think because they beat the highest ranked opponent, but I also think just the way they went about it in a way that we didn't think they probably were going to be able to is really impressive to me.
I differ a little. My number one is Bama. I don't think Arkansas is as good as everyone thought they were. That hurts to say. I really did. I really do like Sam Pittman. I'm really rooting for them. They're a fun team to watch. It was just my the reason I was impressed with Bama so much is watching uh, Arkansas come back to within a touchdown. They get about 20, I think, unanswered, something like that, 2021, an onside kick recovery, in the third quarter, like crazy stuff like that. Stuff that really changes the momentum of a football game, which really can have an adverse effect on a team. Bama just was like, we don't care. And not only did they give up those points and come back, but they came back and covered on like what was it, a 17, 18-point spread at
Yeah, I
closing,
think it
something.
was. I think it might have gotten up to 20.
Yeah. So and I was on Arkansas. You see that comeback, you're like, oh, okay, at least they're keeping it within the number. They're competitive for this game, and then they basically, it felt like they lost twice. They lost to Bama in the first half where they got decimated. Then they're starting to come back, and then they get decimated again in the late third and fourth quarter. Number two, I would say Clemson. Beating two highly ranked teams back to back in conference in back to back weeks is very tough. Clemson did it handedly. I think they covered both spreads, if I'm not mistaken. Which old saying, good teams win, great teams cover. Clemson was a favorite in both, covered both, so they out. You
No, they
know,
didn't cover against Wake.
oh,
They,
they didn't.
they missed it by half a point. Well, it depends on what number you got, but it was they won by 7. I think the
I
number
thought it closed
was.
at 6.5. Either
Then they
way,
won by 6 in overtime. One of the two. Yeah, it was either they won by 6 and the line was 6.5, or they won by 7 and the line was 7.5. But Wake
okay.
covered that game.
E- in either case, I think still statement win.
Yes, still a very good win.
I would put Oak State third. I thought Baylor is a good team. I think they have a little to figure out. Again, I don't think it'll surprise me if they're back on the top 25, playing in like a sought after bowl game, not a New Year's Eve 6, but a sought after bowl game. Um, and then kind of rounding out, I think Michigan, if only for the reason I think Michigan's a very good football team. There's a date they have circled on their calendar, and it's going to be the only game that matters as long as they continue the way they're going, with the exception of next Saturday when they play Penn State, and that's their game against Ohio State. Ohio State, their most heated rival. I just didn't think Iowa was that good, and if you look at the offense of Iowa, the defense is very good. So holding Michigan at 27 when they've scored upwards of 50 and 35 and 59 against various teams was pretty good, but still 27 is a decent amount of points, and Iowa's offense, I never thought that they were going to cover, so that didn't impress me as much. Um, Two teams that did impress me, or at least have impressed this season, Michael, Kansas and TCU. So Kansas, their win total over under was 2.5. They are now 5-0. College game day is coming to Kansas because they're playing the also undefeated 4-0 TCU. TCU is favored by 7 for those of you looking for the line. But I just wanted to, I don't know, I want to give a shout out. And this is the fun part. This is like when we talked about App State. Like, college football is awesome because Kansas, no one expected anything at Kansas. And they get a change of coaches, they get a change of mentality, and now they're out there kicking ass. I think that's just a lot of fun. I don't know if you had any input on the Kansas. I got real into it on Twitter when they everybody's tweeting at college game day, like once the game ended, like, come to Kansas, come to the TCU game. Like, it riled me up. I got excited.
No, I mean you hit the nail on the head. This is why college football is fun because this doesn't happen in any other sport where
Yeah.
a team that you completely discard from the outset just shows up out of nowhere. Yeah, no, I mean it's awesome. It's awesome for that, for because it really is like sad when they cut to a Oklahoma Kansas game and it's like 2017 and there's like 6 people there and they're just
Mm-hmm.
waiting for basketball season to start. It's really sad. So it's It's fun. I love that they're good. It's really cool. It's going to be a great atmosphere Saturday for game day at in Lawrence. Um, TCU though, I
They're a good football team.
yeah, I mean, Sonny Dykes is a really good coach and has been for a long time at SMU, and their teams have always been good. They've been able to attract transfers out of Power Five programs there, and that he was really building something. And then he walked across the street to TCU to a place that has a ton more resources in a conference that is going to have a power vacuum coming up, and he looks like he's in a prime position to really take TCU back to the Rose Bowl type of Andy Dalton type of TCU. Remember Tank Carter? He was like the
That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
yeah, like remember that guy? He was like the Andy Dalton of the defense, just a
Yeah,
red
yeah, yeah.
linebacker. Yeah, those days. They're going back to those days because Sonny Dykes is really building something there. They demolished Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel or not, Oklahoma got absolutely shredded in that game. So, um, as I'm talking it out, I had that game on my card. I think I'm going to take it off because I think there's probably like a little bit of line play going on here.
With the hype around college game day
With the
and
hyper, yeah, I think I've effectively talked myself out of it. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a lot of fun, really cool. I'm excited.
uh in lesser news, uh or not as fun news. So two college football firings. We've been on this college football coach firing discussion for a while. This has been every episode we've talked about it because it happened pretty easily thanks to Scott Frost and his abysmal performance by week 3 and also the entirety of last year. So Carl Dorrell, who we've been mentioning multiple times, is fired out of Colorado. His defensive coordinator, I think, also got fired by the AD. And then the big surprise, as of we're recording on Monday, so I think this was Sunday. Paul Christ has been released from his head coaching job at Wisconsin, which I think surprised me more than the Carl Durrell one. I don't know if there's any I didn't really hear any chirpings about him getting fired, so I was kind of surprised. I don't know about you.
I think there's something to Brett Bielema being the one to deliver the axe there that kind of not made this foreseeable, but you at least understand why it happened now. And I think here's the so Wisconsin was always planning on handing the keys to the kingdom to Jim Leonard at some point.
Yeah, yeah. Paul Christ had
Um,
been there for quite
he's
some
been there
time.
for a long time, like 6 or 7 years at least. It might be a decade at this point because I don't know when Alvarez retired, but um,
He was the head coach from 2015 until yesterday. So yeah, you're 8 years.
wow, I don't know how I knew that. So uh, anyway, I'm just really impressed with my own brain. But so the so really, I think that this is interesting in that it's the right decision for them to do it, and I think it creates a lot of flexibility for Wisconsin in that they get the opportunity to see if Jim Leonard can do this job in a way that I think it parallels very closely to Luke Fickell getting the interim Ohio State job. And I think this might be a similar situation where it's a guy who graduated from the university, a homegrown guy who they want to give the job to. They just can't go all in, and this is a way to give him a chance to earn it.
That's
And
that's fair.
and I think that if they don't, Lance Leipold at Kansas, uh, coached at Wisconsin Whitewater, so a guy who is familiar with the area, who is a very attractive coach, who right now they are presumably the best job available. Um, I think better than Nebraska by and large.
Hmm.
So I think they have enough of a safety net where now they can say, look, we fire Paul Chris, we give Jim Leonard a chance. If Jim Leonard proves to be the guy, we don't even have to worry about it. If he doesn't, we can go out. go give Lance Leipold whatever he wants because we have all that Big Ten, excuse me, um, Big Ten money coming in from the TV contract that's going to kick in. We can pay him whatever he wants to, give him the staff that he wants to, and we have our fallback either way. So I think Wisconsin made a really smart decision as long as they don't have another bigger fish enter the water for the Lance Leipold sweepstakes, which I think is a smart calculus by them because the biggest fish that could enter right now foreseeably is Auburn, because I think the potential for
They're
Auburn.
calling for it. They're calling for his head.
Yes, but I think when you say what out of the programs that would come out, and Andy Staples and Ari Washman were talking about this today, out of the programs that could have head coaching vacancies, Auburn would have, assuming they fire Brian Harsin, Auburn would have the biggest potential as a program because you can win a national championship there. You don't know that you can do it in Wisconsin based on where the talent you have to recruit. In your geographic area, it'd be very difficult to do unless you get a quarterback that just transcends, you know, like a Cam Newton-esque quarterback. Um, it'd be very difficult for Wisconsin to win a national title. You could do it at Auburn. So they attract the top of the line talent, but
Mm-hmm.
that I think the problem there or the benefit there for Wisconsin is that they know that the top flight coaching candidates, Lance Leipold is not the guy Auburn is looking for, right? That's kind of the calculus there. That anybody in that striation of programs is not looking for a guy like Lance Leipold because they
Yeah,
know they can go get somebody who's a little bit sexier of a pickup, right? Like a
yeah,
even
and if Auburn gets him, that's that's a recipe for disaster as far as how
I
quickly
mean
your head
that's
coach can be
exactly
fired.
that's what they just did with Brian Harsin.
Yeah, it's exactly what.
It's just a geographic outsider that they pick because he's succeeding, and then it doesn't work out. So they would be looking at like, I don't know who they try to go get. It would probably be somebody poached off of a current staff, but
Or Urban,
what?
or Urban.
I mean, maybe, but I have a tough time seeing.
I have a tough time seeing that for one reason, and this is really in the weeds, but I believe the president of the institution is like a ex-military general, and I don't think he'd go for the character flaws maybe that got exposed with some of the things that
Maybe.
happened to Urban.
Yeah. Either way, what I'm saying is that Auburn's not looking for Lance Leipold. So Wisconsin knows if they want Lance Leipold, they can go get him. And
Yeah,
this gives them a chance to give the program to Jim Leonard if he succeeds. If he fails, they can give it to Leipold. So I think if, what looks like a surprising move here is probably a pretty smart move. I think what it come the problem is for Wisconsin, I think what the biggest calculus for them and whether or not Jim Leonard can actually do this job has nothing to do with what happens the rest of this year. It has everything to do with whether or not he can keep a recruiting class together and whether or not he can recruit better than Paul Chryst was, because Paul Chryst wasn't a great recruiter at Wisconsin. They were good developers of talent. So it'll be interesting to see how they judge his performance throughout the rest of this year. Really, really interesting coaching decision there at Wisconsin.
yeah, and so I'll say three things before we kind of wrap up the Wisconsin talk because I think that was a little less expected. Colorado, not as big of a name, no offense, as Wisconsin football. Paul Chryst was like that homegrown guy. He played tight end for Wisconsin. Um, it it they went 0-2 in conference play so far. They're 2-3. They lost against some teams they shouldn't have lost against. In fact, their only two wins were Illinois State and New Mexico State. So not you
Yeah,
know
they lost to Wazoo
established football programs as we'd call it.
along with
Um,
Ohio State and Illinois.
yeah, I think what's interesting is that the season does get easier from here. They are at Northwestern, who they are 10-point favorites with a fired head coach, and that line has not moved since opening. They then go to Michigan State, who we have seen is not very good this year.
Yeah.
They have Purdue at home. Then they have Maryland at home. Maryland likes to play spoiler, but I think if you think interim coach, you never know. He probably pulls one out. And then you have at Iowa, at Nebraska, and then home against Minnesota. I think of all those games, I I have trouble seeing if the players get up and they play to to the level that they can, and the coaching doesn't utterly fail them. I see 1, 2, 3, 5. They could go 5-2 over the next remainder regular season game.
I think all of them are winnable. I don't think that, especially with the talent and the way that
I
they.
think Minnesota will be very hard to beat. I think you might see Minnesota jump back into the top 20.
I would have said that, but they did just get beat up by Purdue. Now, granted, Purdue has a very good quarterback, and Wisconsin doesn't. But I could, if you ask me to make an argument that Wisconsin could win every game, I think I could find one, which is good enough. So,
That's fair.
I mean, we'll see.
All right, so we're gonna. Oh, there's huge, awesome news. The regular season for the New York Yankees ends this Wednesday. So no matter what happens, you won't have to fucking see Aaron Judge on your television when you're watching football. So that's the last piece of news. I wanted to save that for you, Mike, because you're a Yankees fan. Um, it's also 2022. Like, people have multiple TVs if they really like sports. So maybe you cutting into the Yankees game that I like already have on, just in case I want to peek at Aaron Judge and get a home run. Like, maybe I don't need that. Maybe I don't need a cut in on like a big play and like, here's Aaron Judge getting walked again.
Yeah. For the
So
record,
fucking.
I don't agree with cut it. If it's
I,
like you
if
said, it's 2022. If MLB Network has put the Yankee game on like national broadcast every single night for the past 2 weeks, go
to
fund
watch him walk and strike out, no
it. Yeah.
offense, no offense. I have
I
no
mean,
room to talk.
he is walking. He is walking at a like very large clip because
If I were the rest of the pitchers in the MLB, I would get together. I'd have a conference. I'd be like, hey, wouldn't it be hilarious if we just walked him for the rest of the year? Like, there's only like 8 games left. Anyway,
like I think tonight he went 1 for 3 with a walk. That's basically been his stat line, except for the one night he hit the 61st home run.
61st.
He basically goes like 1 for 3 or 2 for 4 with a walk. So he's going to win the Triple Crown, which is also cool. But yeah, I mean, I know. Look, I get it. It's a shame you're lashing out because the Mets are not going to
We
win
don't
the.
talk. This is not a baseball show. This is football related. The
Hey,
Mets,
look,
the
you
Mets
opened
have
the door. I just
no.
walked
That's
through it.
football. That is football related. It was forced onto me. As a side note, if I find the producer at ESPN who decided to do this, and he is in the running next year to hit 62, I will hog tie that producer so that he can't like press the button to make the two screens go to the side. Fucking stupid. All right, let's get into the games. We got a great slate ish. Some pretty fun games. I would
Should be
say
a
the
fun slate. I will say that. I don't know
fun
that it's a
fun
great slate, but
slate
it should be a fun slate.
fun slate up until about
Yeah,
3:30, and
the
then
night
there's a
games
couple good
are
night
not.
games.
Night games are not great. But
Yeah. So let's start out. We'll start as we always do. We talk in order, sequentially of time. Try to include all the fun little matchups. So Tennessee at LSU, noon kickoff. Tennessee is -2.5. Over under 64. Michael, take it away.
this will be interesting because I heard a stat that Brian Kelly has been down 14 points in 3 of his 4 or 5 games as LSU's head coach and won 2 of them.
That sounds
Um,
about right.
yeah, they
Because
lost.
every time LSU comes back to win, I at some point in that game have thought, how the fuck has Brian Kelly not been fired? And then I'm like, oh yeah, they only lost one game in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, they lost. They lost the game where they came all the way back and then had the extra point block. So, I mean, I guess all's well that ends well. But I think this is the week that it doesn't end well. Mostly because I think Tennessee is a team that is going. If they give up a 14-point lead to Tennessee, that's not a team you can catch up on.
You ain't coming back,
Yeah,
baby.
exactly. So, I think this game being at noon is a huge disadvantage for LSU. I would imagine Brian Kelly has been just calling Greg Sankey's office at noon every day this week, just like ringing the phone off the hook every day at noon. And then when Greg Sankey finally answers, he's gonna be like, "Oh, isn't that an inconvenient time?" And then just hang up the phone.
Yeah, This seems like so, and here's my qualm with this. This seems like, and I don't know how they flex games in. Obviously, there's a lot that goes on, but in the SEC specifically, like if you're LSU, you should be knocking at the door every day at the conference headquarters, and being like, "Hey, what the fuck? Why isn't this game at 7? Like, why
Yeah,
isn't this the night
exactly.
game?"
Yeah,
'Cause
even with the Alabama Texas A&M matchup at 7 this week,
it's not as it's just simply not as consequential as
yeah,
this week.
exactly. Especially with Texas A. Like, granted, I guess you could say if Texas A&M would have beaten Mississippi State, it would have a lot more consequence. But whatever. The
Mm.
point is, this game works out very well for Tennessee, getting to play a noon game at LSU because LSU fans are the whiniest babies about having to play noon games. Out of all of the teams that have to play noon games, they are by far the whiniest. Um,
Well,
like,
because it's easier to be louder and cheer for your team more when you've been drinking since 9 a.m. And if
just
the
wake
game's
up
at
earlier.
noon,
It's
that's
as
not
if
how
alarm clocks don't exist in
it's not,
Louisiana.
that's not
Like,
how
just
Louisiana.
wake up earlier.
I can tell you, having gone to school in Louisiana, that's not how that works. They were drinking the night before. What do you expect them to do? Wake up and have a hangover? Fuck that.
Wake up earlier. I don't. It doesn't make any sense to me. For that reason, I love Tennessee in this spot. I have it on my card, but Tennessee minus 2.5. Besides the fact that they don't have to deal with Baton Rouge at 7 o'clock at night. They're just the better team, and I think this is the week this streak finally runs out for Brian Kelly. I think 2.5 is way too few points. Tennessee made a believer out of me when they beat Florida at home. I think this game probably I look at it and I go Tennessee should be a 2 touchdown favorite. But I think ultimately they win by like 5 because it's Tennessee.
Hmm.
But I do think they win this game and they win it by more than a field goal.
Yeah, so I don't like that I agree with you, but yes, I am on Tennessee. They've shown themselves to be, in contention for very, very much so as the number 3 in a very tight race for the SEC. Obviously Tennessee has a couple big games coming up. This is what I would call like a get right game almost, where you're not wrong because you haven't lost yet, but you're prepping for what is certainly a big
Coming,
game next
yeah.
week against Alabama. So like next week, you're going to see Tennessee either really succeed or really fail. And I think this is where you look at your team and go, hey, this is not a look ahead. LSU is a good team. We're only favored by, and granted, I know they don't look at the lines. All the coaches say they don't look at the fucking lines. I don't believe that shit. But Tennessee is playing Alabama and Georgia this year. So they have the ability, and I don't know why I said it like that. They have the ability to go in, and if they really are the number 1 in the SEC, which means they will make the college football playoffs, like they have the capability to prove it in the regular season. And I think if they could beat even one of those teams and then make it to the SEC championship game, if somehow, I would have to see how that would work out. I think Georgia would have to lose an additional game if they beat Tennessee or something like that. But anyway, my point is this is the start of a difficult stretch for Tennessee. They have Alabama next week. They have some TN Martin on the 22nd, whatever. Then they have Kentucky, who's not a bad team, and then they have Georgia before finishing up with Missouri and South Carolina. Like those are good teams. So this is your finalize everything before getting to the most difficult part of the season. If you want to be a team where we are talking about, are they college football playoff material? Obviously, if this was a 12-game playoff or 12 team playoff, I think they'd make it. But yeah, I think Tennessee minus 2.5. I also like the under. I know it sucks taking unders, but under 64. I don't think LSU is going to score probably more than 3 touchdowns in this game, but we'll see.
Yeah. I So it's weird because I almost think against a different SEC West opponent, I would hate Tennessee in this spot. But against LSU specifically, and like what we talked about, the psychological, like,
It seems like LSU should have failed more, and this feels like when
yes,
they when the
it's, well, I
when
was
the
going to say. I combine the whininess of the fan base with the fact that LSU should not be in the spot that they're in because they keep giving up 2 touchdown leads at the beginning of these games, and I mean that's how it feels. I mean they just played a one score game against Auburn, who everybody agrees is terrible.
Is not,
So
yeah,
yeah, so like do I like this spot for Tennessee? No, but I just don't like LSU more, and that's
yeah.
a weird like dynamic to have because Tennessee should be in a spot where they really shouldn't. Like this should be a spot where Tennessee, if they're really Tennessee, steps on a rake here. But
Mhm.
it just doesn't feel like that's in the cards because LSU doesn't seem like the team that's going to do that to them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Moving on to college game day. TCU at Kansas, noon kickoff. TCU's -7 right now. That line has started to move in TCU's
Favorite?
disadvantage if you're taking the line, but
Yeah, yeah,
favored.
yeah. Yeah,
So
TCU is yes, TCU is becoming more heavily favored.
correct. Over under is 67.5. I'm excited for this game. This game will be eh, it'll be on one of the TVs. Let's put it that way. Because I will be rooting for Kansas. I don't have a bet for this game, but I just think it's going to be a fun matchup. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so I mean it's gonna be a great time to watch. My initial reaction was take Kansas in the points just
Hmm.
because game day will be there. They'll be so juiced up. Um, but I just can't get behind Kansas to like this, especially the way TCU looked last week. Max Duggan is a great quarterback. They have talent. It's a good offense, and to the magic's got to wear off at some point, right?
You feel
I
that way with
just
a lot of teams, yeah.
and
Like App State, like it happened, it wore off.
maybe so the public money splits don't come out till tomorrow, so I may keep it as a May ad Kansas +7 just because I think 7 points at home is so many points for a team that has a game day. I mean we saw it with Uh, no, I was thinking. Sorry, I was thinking of App State, but they were
They were
actually
favored.
yeah they were coming off a win. But like that game day bump, there's something about the atmosphere, especially for a home dog, that really invigorates a campus. So
Hmm.
I +7.5 or plus if it gets above a score, if it gets to 8.5, I think you've got to take Kansas just on principle. I don't know that it ever gets there. I think it probably settles probably 7.5, 8. But at 7.5, I think it's really tough to not add Kansas to a card here, just because Lance Leipold's a really good. It's not just the fact that they're 5-0, and it's not just the fact that they've beaten Iowa State, but it's the fact that they went out and they were averaging 45 points a game in their wins at West Virginia, against Duke, against all these teams that they probably shouldn't have beaten, and
Yeah,
then they
traditionally are much better teams, at least in the past 10 years.
yeah, but then they play Iowa State and they win a game 17-14. So
Yeah.
they're just finding ways to win in different ways against teams they shouldn't beat. It's this, and Lance Leipold has done this everywhere he's been. He did it at Wisconsin Whitewater. He did it at Buffalo. He's doing it here. I trust them to be in this game late to some extent. Now I we'll see, but it's on the Mayad. I don't know yet, but I like Kansas in the spot. It's just TCU was very impressive, and that to me tells me right now I've now talked myself back into Kansas because it feels like every week everything we think we know gets absolutely crapped on. So
Yeah,
I feel
I
like
mean, especially
now,
with Kansas, right? Like that is the one where everyone's like, "There's no way they do it this week,"
yeah, exactly, and they
and
just
they
keep
fucking
doing
do it.
it. But it's like it's yeah, it every week it feels like there's a team or a couple teams in it, and it's like Minesweeper trying to figure out which team that you thought you knew completely like last Georgia, Alabama, like Oklahoma, USC the week they didn't cover against Oregon State. The every week there's a team that just you don't know where when it's coming, but they just come out and lay a total egg. And I was afraid of that being Kansas, but now I've come back around to like it was TCU at home in a big spot against Oklahoma a complete aberration, and that
Mhm.
feels like it might be. So, but they're 5-0, so my head's totally in a pretzel in this game. I think you take Kansas at the points at home. I'm gonna put it as a May add.
I will say I may add like as just on literal game day, not the show. But if this hits plus 300 on the money line for Kansas, I might just sprinkle and just have fun
Yeah,
with it because
yeah,
like
just
you
yeah,
never know.
exactly.
There's those teams of destiny, and eventually the train comes to a halt, usually screeching, crashing, burning. But you know, like I wouldn't consider this a loss for the Jayhawks whatsoever if they don't come out on top. But I could absolutely see a world where they, everybody gets swept up in the emotion and
Yeah,
they
no,
don't
I
perform.
don't hate that. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Like that's the logic there. Exactly.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Red River Shootout. It used to be called that, and then America failed us. It's now called the Red River Showdown. That's so lame. I
I
don't
thought it
like
was just
that.
a Red River rivalry.
Even worse.
I
Anyway,
guess Red River Showdown is probably right. I don't know what I'm thinking.
God forbid we say shootout. Anyway, Texas at Oklahoma, noon Eastern. Texas -7, over under 65.5. Michael, these two
Uh,
teams are. That was misleading. I apologize. These two teams should have been better, and they're not. But that's all I'll say for now. Go ahead.
yeah, I think this is going to be interesting, and just this not does determine, but sort of determines like who can save their season and who can't.
Yes,
Um,
100%. This is not to quote, pardon my take, but this is a loser leaves town like kind of game where
yeah,
you're you're at the precipice of falling off the cliff, and you're fighting with this other team about who has to fall off the cliff, and
yeah.
only one of you has to do it. So which one is it going to be?
Yeah, I'm not touching this spread with a 10-foot pole because I got absolutely burnt on Texas last year. So I'm not going anywhere near this game. The only thing I'll say is that I think the uncertainty in this line is because nobody knows whether or not Ewers is playing. Everybody
Yeah,
knows Gabriel's not playing, but if Ewers plays, I think this line might be much bigger. Um, and we'll see. We'll see what the updates are out of Austin this week. But yeah, don't this. Hopefully, it's as fun as most of these games are. With two backup quarterbacks, it probably won't be.
hmm
But if Ewers is back, it'll be interesting to see just how he performs in general. Not because I think he could have like a like I have arrived moment against a
yeah,
very bad defense. So we'll see.
yeah. Well, I'm not going to bet the spread or the total. If Ewers is out, I will be betting the under in this game.
That's a
Um,
smart play.
if Ewers is in, I'm not. I might at like right before kickoff actually take the over because I'm a
Ooh.
sucker for this game being like a ridiculous outcome. But if both starting quarterbacks are out, Texas does have a good defense. They held Alabama to 20 points. I question where 65.5 is coming from two backups. Um,
But
that's
Oklahoma's defense looked so bad. They were just. I mean, they gave up
I
55
know,
on their own to TCU.
I know. No, I did. I'm not, again. I'm not saying the Sooners are good, but I mean, t- shit. Yeah. Well, look, I don't know that Texas on offense is that good without Ewers.
No,
They've
I don't
struggled.
either. Yeah,
They've struggled, and you could make the argument that Texas very well could be 4-1 if they had Ewers, or maybe even 5-0, but they
they might
don't.
be 5-0.
The reality is they don't, and they're just not performing well when they don't have him. So, are we rushing to get him back healthy? That's a question, a fair question. And B, even if he is healthy, what does he come back? What does he look like? But C, is he even coming back at all this week? I don't. I think they want him back. I think maybe they. I think maybe they bend the knee on taking care of him in the long term rather than trying to salvage a season where they're already 3-2. So we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see. The line certainly has moved as if he's coming back. That
yeah,
will.
no, that is true. I mean, what is that? A 9-point jump from open?
Yes, so it opened at +2.5 Texas, and
Now
immediately,
-7. Yeah, somebody got the word that he's playing this week.
yeah. So it wouldn't. I mean, again, wouldn't surprise me if he's coming back. But yeah, if he's out, under. If not, no bet. We'll still watch. Very fun game to watch. Something crazy always happens in this
Yes,
game,
yeah. This game won't be normal
and
because
they
that's.
fucking. This
Can I
is
bet on that? Can I
yes,
bet? Can I bet in
minus
Virginia?
10,000.
Can I bet? Can I bet in Virginia where it's legal, not North Carolina, that something insane will happen in this game?
Yeah,
Because that's the only thing I'll take.
and this is probably a top 15, 20 college football matchup of these teams fucking hate each other.
Yeah,
So those are always fun to watch.
yeah.
All right, moving on. The probably only good game of the afternoon slate. There's a couple mixed in there. There's Tulane. Shout out our overtime win. But of the major matchups,
Really
Utah.
fun game.
Yeah,
I did watch that game on Friday night. That was a lot of fun.
I was there. I was very intoxicated. It was great. Utah at UCLA. 3:30 kickoff. Utah is -4.5. Over under 64. I'll let you go first, Michael.
This is going to be very interesting. Um, I DTR is such a variable quarterback
Mm-hmm.
that I I think I'm with you in that I do like Utah in the spot. Um, because everybody UCLA got its own showcase and DTR juked that one dude and or those two dudes into each other and everybody the Joe Public on the East Coast who is just stuck inside after Hurricane Ian and has nothing better to do is going to put money on UCLA for this game. I guarantee the public tickets are going to be heavily UCLA. The money's going to be on Utah. I think I'm going to add Utah to the card here. -4.5. They have been on a roll since they lost to Florida.
Florida. Yep.
They have been dominating everybody. They killed my under bet with them for Oregon State because they rolled through a defense that USC couldn't even figure out.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like Utah on the spot. Now that I'm talking it through, do they play USC next week?
Let me look. They do play USC next week.
I'm out. I'm back out.
Uh,
uh, I am
you're
back
thinking this
out.
is a look ahead against an 18th ranked opponent?
Oh, did they rank UCLA this week?
UCLA is 18.
Okay, never mind. I'm back in. Utah, Utah -4.5.
That's a beautiful snapshot of why we call this show stupid versus.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm back in.
I'm out.
I
I'm
didn't.
in. I'm out. I'm in. You're just
Yeah, exactly. I'm in. Now I'm back. Now, yeah, exactly. Nope. Mm-hmm.
You're Jesus Christ. It's like we're trying to convince you to be on Ocean's 11. I also like Utah on the spot. Utah's a very good team. Utah has a lot of hype. Utah also knows that because of their week 1 loss, which is not the end of the world to Florida,
As we talked about,
correct? They know they have to get up for this game. This is not a look ahead. This is in the Rose Bowl at 2:30 in the or 3. Well, I'm sure for them it's fucking noon.
12:30. Yeah.
Goddamn California, but it is an afternoon kickoff. They will be prime time. It'll be the only good game at that time, and Utah has looked dominant. Utah hasn't allowed more than 16 points in 1 month span of time over the last 4 games. They won against SDSU, 7 points. ASU only gave up 13. Oregon State, a good team, only gave up 16 points. Their defense is playing like their faces are melting off, and the only thing they can do to stop them from melting is to hold the other team to 21 points or less.
God,
And the offense is scoring 30 plus. The only game the offense has not scored 35 or more points was against Florida, where they scored 26 and they lost 26-29. They scored an abhorrent 73 points against SUU. I don't even know who that
Southern
is.
Utah.
Southern Utah. Okay, so Not a
That
good
was
example.
that was
However,
the game where they were like 28-point favorites and
oh
they
yeah,
won by 70.
but they beat SDSU, covered the spread, won, scored 35 points. They beat ASU, who just fired their coach. That was my lock of the year. 34 points scored. They beat Oregon State, who has a pretty good team. Scored 42, only allowed 16. This team has been on a roll. They've been a covering machine, which worries me. This very well could be a 2-point game. I don't see a world in which Utah loses this game. I see a world in which Utah battles this out. I and 4.5 is a lot of points given that, but I still am going to ride them until they fail me. And if they fail me this week, I'll be honest, they probably should be a touchdown favorite or touchdown underdog
Yeah.
to USC. I would take them against
Now
USC.
you just keep in mind UCLA did just beat Washington, but they also barely beat on the same ground. They barely beat South Alabama.
Correct.
So that's what I mean when I say DTR is a very variable quarterback.
Correct. And the only so the only good team UCLA has beat this year is Washington.
Yeah, and I would posit is Washington good.
Yes. That's fair. That's fair. We talked about that earlier. That's fair. So this will be a great game. I am on Utah minus 4.5. I might see if that line dips back down when the betting kind of continues. Anyway, move on. BYU at Notre Dame, 7:30 kickoff. BYU is +4. I don't have any plays for this game. BYU has upset me in the past with their performance this year. They were great early on. They seem to have hit a road bump. I'm curious, Michael. Actually, I said I don't have a play. I do have a play. That's a lie. But go ahead, Michael.
No, I don't. This is a neutral site
I
game.
don't want to talk about this game.
No, I mean it's a neutral site game in Vegas. I don't know what is going to happen here.
Yeah, both these teams really should not like the sinning that goes on there. I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah, true. BYU only beat Utah State by 10, which seems like not a lot.
Nope.
And they've kind of ever since that
They were
Oregon,
24-point favorites.
yeah, ever since that Oregon meltdown. I guess that was the most recent game they played, but they just I don't know. Some of the shine is taken off of them, and like, is Notre Dame on the up and up? Yes. Should this probably be a pick 'em? Yes. Do I still know which way it's going to go? No. I mean, I don't know. I would almost say, yeah. I like. I hate this spread. I would say take Notre Dame money line, which almost doesn't make any sense, but I think Notre Dame wins this game. Do they cover? I have no idea. Stay. I hate where this line is. Stay away from it. This game could be 17-7. It could be, 31-30. I have no clue. I have no clue who wins. It should be a cool atmosphere. I'll give it that. Like the BYU should travel down from you or down up down
Down.
down from Utah. Colorado is the one that always screws
Las
me.
Vegas is very far south.
Well, I was thinking of like Colorado, Wyoming, and then is it? I don't know. Anyway, point is,
It's on the Mexico border, Michael.
no, Vegas isn't.
Nevada, the state is.
Nevada is.
Did I fuck that up?
I'm pretty sure you did. Nevada doesn't share a border with Mexico.
Here's how much I like looking up football teams. I Google searched Nevada and it said, "Do you mean Nevada?"
Yeah, Nevada doesn't have a border,
Oh, right. It
and
has
Provo
California.
is actually
Well,
west.
California is a foreign country.
Uh,
Anyway,
my
still
point
south.
was Provo. Provo is only one state away from Vegas, and Notre Dame always travels. So my point is, this should be a cool atmosphere.
Yeah.
That was the stupidest conversation we've ever had. So I,
Oh, bad.
no, it definitely is. I hate this line. I hate this total. Watch the game because it's two uniforms you recognize. Clap with the sounds. Otherwise, don't touch this game.
I might take the points with BYU. I don't love it. It's certainly not something I feel in my gut. Notre Dame very much could be on the up and up after scoring, 50 some
45
points.
against North Carolina.
Yeah. However, they have also looked really, really bad really bad this year at
Yeah,
times. Obviously, the Marshall loss, but there have been points where I've genuinely asked, like, what are we doing at Notre Dame that this is the on-field performance?
yeah.
BYU, I've done the same thing where, like, last week you look at the teams and you're like, okay, 24-point favorite, Utah State not good, BYU should be good. This is a bounce back from a loss, and they
And
don't
they
do
just
shit
they
with
just laid an egg. Yeah. So
laid an egg.
I
Maybe
think
that
the
was maybe that was them playing on Thursday, short week. They'll have a little more prep time. So I am leaning BYU at the points. I just because it seems like, again, like you said, like this should be like a pick 'em almost, and I might just take the points. That's if I'm bored at 7:30 at night.
yeah,
Last,
I think the
yeah,
biggest question here is: do you think Notre Dame actually got right, or did they just play Gene Chizik and North Carolina's defense?
yep,
That's really like that determines what way you're going to go on this spread. But
100%. Um, last one. FSU at NC State, 8 p.m. Florida State is +3. Over under is 52.5. Michael, does NC State bounce back after a loss to Clemson, or does FSU continue to roll on what is maybe objectively a little better season than they expected to have, or at least beating better teams than them that we
yeah,
think?
this is a who gets off the mat game because
Mm-hmm.
both of them had probably like you would consider both disappointing performances. Florida State at home against Wake Forest, they got beat pretty soundly. I think they got back into the game late, but never really close. And then NC
Yep.
State just never could get any momentum going to make that game competitive at Clemson. So, um, no, no real plays here. I think 52 might be a little low for the total, just because
Mm-hmm.
Florida State is a very competent offense. They scored, I think, 31 on Wake, which their defense isn't good. But
They scored 20. Wake scored 31 on them. Florida State only scored 21. It was 21-31.
oh, it did finish at that score. Okay,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I lean the over there still because I think you could see this game at a 31-26 sort of spot.
Mm-hmm.
As far as who bounces back better, I think you're probably inclined to take the home team. Do I like them by more than a field goal? Probably not. So I think overall, I stay away from the line here. I think more than anything, this is a really interesting game of in the ACC. Which of these two teams, because they do have big games coming up, which of these teams can get themselves off the mat and kind of steered back in the direction they thought this season was headed after last
Mm-hmm.
week? So um, really, really interesting matchup there for.
Yeah,
The,
I thought NC State was a lot better than they performed against Clemson. I was a little disappointed in NC State. I think FSU got a little bit of hype early on this season. Um, I'd lean NC State at home -3 in a bounce back kind of situation, but they also have a very difficult schedule ahead of them. They got Syracuse, then a, a week where they're playing VT, and then they have Wake, then Louisville, then UNC at the end. So with Boston College mixed in. So point being, I don't think this is a look ahead at all, especially if you look at some of the teams Florida State has played close and beaten. They beat LSU, who's now ranked again, and they've kind of beat up on Louisville a little bit. Definitely beat up on Boston College, but I lean NC State at home just in a bounce back situation. That's my take. I do agree. 52 seems a little low. I definitely could see this being like each team scores 21 to 28 points, so it averages out to over 52. I really do see a little more points than that. But anyway, all right, we'll get on to our cards because we've been running probably our longest show ever. So, um,
we can get
you want,
through it. Yeah.
yeah, what you want to go first on your card, or you want to go second?
Yeah,